Are you ready for the very strange saga of this leather witch hat? The origin story of how this came about is actually really strange. The footage I'm about to show you of how this was made hinges on some decisions that were supposed to be led by a sponsor read that went wrong. Today, for the first time ever, I have for you an anti-sponsor read. But first, let me just tell you about why I wanted this hat, okay? Obviously, I really love my Undertaker cosplay, and there are lots of pieces to my Undertaker cosplay that would look really cute as a Ren Fair outfit. And so, for the Ren Fair this year, I'm going to essentially wear half of my Undertaker cosplay with a witch hat. And then I get contacted by this company to be a sponsor, and they are actually a crafting product. I never get sponsorships from actual crafting things. I once heard Rhett and Link say this, and it sticks with me so much. They said that the rule about sponsorships is if it is perfect, if it makes perfect sense, it will never happen. The only time I have ever gotten, like, the perfect, like, sponsor for a video is when I've worked with Surebonder. That's happened once. We'll get to what this company sold. First, I'll just explain to you the part of this hat that is very simple, had no weird stuff going on, had nothing to do with this story of the sponsor, just very easy. Let's talk about the cone of the hat and how I got it into this cute... You know what this is giving to me? And tell me if I'm wrong. Is the top of this hat giving the Chows from the Chow Garden from Sonic Adventure Battle 2? As usual, I couldn't entirely figure out how to do this shape, so I molded it in Monster Clay and then made a pattern of it, as you do. But here's the pattern. You'll notice this pattern is a little strange. Oh, I get to use the drawing now. How cool is this? I can draw. These guys right here, these are the top of the hat. You'll notice there's some weird stuff going on over here though. Why is the brim of the hat only 1/7 of the hat? And why does this say cut 7 cardboard? We'll get to it. So the top of the hat is those 3 pieces cut out in felt and the leather, and then I basting sprayed them onto the felt and then just sewed them together. Like, I didn't even actually like flatline around the edge or anything. I just let the basting spray, got them sewed together. This is the easy part of the hat with nothing weird. The felt is enough to just hold it into this shape, but then it can compress down. The idea with this hat was that it was something you could travel with, which it is in practice, but I actually had some pretty interesting ideas about how to make this fold up like this, but use cardboard. I wanted to try to do that for 2 reasons. Cardboard is free, and I feel like we're kind of in the age of, like, the kiddos, they want to be able to use those free materials. And I wanted to find a way to use cardboard in a witch hat that, like, actually made sense and wasn't something that was going to be a big giant thing that will have to live on your wall for the rest of your life. Worse than that, if you make it out of cardboard, it's even harder to store because I could actually shove that giant hat back there into many things. The other reason I wanted to try to figure out how to do this in cardboard was because the particular company that sent me this thing wanted me to show how good this thing works with cardboard. Spoiler, this hat doesn't actually have any cardboard, but the idea was that the cardboard pieces would, like, be perfectly sized to fit within the seams of the fabric. This was the test. So that it would, like, fold up like this. So it's like the structure is cardboard. You don't have to buy any interfacing. Obviously, you wouldn't hot glue it, but this is me mocking things up. I didn't get the drawing off. That's the general idea, is that you could use cardboard, but then you're not stuck with something that's this all the time and you could fold and put into your suitcase, which obviously you don't have to worry about if you just use interfacing, which is why my hat has interfacing on it. Spoiler, I gave up on this concept. We gotta do a disclaimer. The product I'm about to show you is not something I actually recommend. They did want to sponsor me, and I emailed them the other day with the grievances that I'm about to show you and told them I'm not doing the sponsorship with you. So this is a pair of electric scissors. I like electric scissors. I bought a pair of electric scissors for cutting up the tablecloths for the wedding. I thought they were great. They saved my hands a lot of pain. And so when this company reached out to me with a different pair of electric scissors, I was like, why not? I think electric scissors are great. Well, they specifically wanted to show how well this thing cut cardboard. And so I came up with this idea of making these like cardboard pieces for a witch hat to try and save people money on having to buy interfacing or even find it now that Joann's is gone. And here's the thing, this thing cuts cardboard very well. It even managed to do like the wider curves. It couldn't do the smaller curves. I had to bring in my X-Acto knife for that. But for the most part, it did exactly what they said it was going to do. The issue was, these were some of the like first shots I got, okay? Cardboard, totally fine. Wow, this is great. 2mm EVA foam, totally fine, totally great, cut it fine. It's only 2mm EVA foam, but you know. Then I get to this fabric, and it will not stop. The blade is like catching it and eating it. And then it gets to this point where you can't get it off. This fabric here, I cannot remember what this is. This is the stuff I bought for our wedding tablecloths. It's pretty loosey-goosey. It's not really thick. It's probably not the ideal thing to be trying to cut with this thing. So I was like, okay, it can't handle this tablecloth fabric, but it did handle cotton twill okay. So I was like, all right, let's keep going. I also just cut a bunch of cardboard with it. So I was like, maybe I dulled the blade. And so I go through and I'm getting my shots because, you know, this is going to be a sponsored segment for a video. And so I'm like, yeah, let me get all these awesome shots of me cutting up this cardboard. Look at it. It can do all these things. It's got all these fancy features. Woo, woo, woo. And then I convinced myself that the problem here is that I went in first with the cardboard. And just like you don't cut even paper with your fabric scissors, I was like, I have dulled this blade and now it can't cut fabric. So I'm getting my shot of how easy it is to replace the blade for the sponsor read, because that's something they wanted me to show. It is easy to replace the blade on literally any pair of electric scissors. But I replaced the blade, and I am so confident that replacing the blade will let it cut fabric that I have it geared up to cut the 1 yard of extra Mood Fabrics buttery soft faux leather that I bought when I thought I was going to run out of fabric for Undertaker and then didn't actually run out of fabric and then just made a witch hat out of it anyway. I get it set up to where I'm gonna replace that blade and then glide that thing across the shot in a beautiful cinematic moment. I get that blade replaced. It's easy to replace a blade, and then this happens. I can't even get it on the screen. I can't even get it in the shot because it just keeps getting stuck. And it's not just that it gets stuck. You have to like roll it again to even get it out of the fabric. And so it just rips everything up. It all just gets trapped behind the blade. And I'm sitting there doing this and I'm like, all right, I've lost my mind. Can electric scissors even actually cut fabric? And I go get this one. This is the one I bought with my own money to cut stuff for the wedding. It's just a pair of electric scissors. It is also cordless. It doesn't have like a light on it. It doesn't have USB-C, which is like what was cool about that one, but it's cordless. I was like, I know that can cut fabric. I need to make sure I'm sane. This one just cuts fabric. Totally fine. The sponsored one does not. Then it was like, well, okay, but can this one cut cardboard? That one can cut cardboard. Maybe this one can cut fabric and not cardboard. And so I'm sitting there with my now cut cardboard from the one I just bought randomly, now knowing that this one can cut fabric and that one can't. And I had this vision of somebody watching my video and buying the fancy one because they like me and they want to support the channel and they wanted a pair of electric scissors to cut fabric with, and then going to cut fabric and having their precious fabric ripped up because I said to buy it. And I was like, I'm not f***ing letting that happen. Y'all are not going to buy this thing, because now you know that it's bad. And I sent an email to them with a picture of it all bunched up in that. And I was like, this does not cut fabric. You want me to say it cuts fabric. It does not. I am not going to lie. Bye-bye. So that's my anti-sponsor read. I hope you enjoyed. Should we now finish how this witch hat was made? I will take you through the attempt of what I was trying to kind of do with the cardboard and ultimately did not do, and hope that you, if you like this idea, can take it and run with it and do it better than I did because it was a little bit tilting. So the idea here is that the cardboard pieces are cut to be exactly the width of the fabric pieces without the seam allowance. So this all had 1/2 inch seam allowance, so all of the cardboard is 1/2 inch smaller than all of those pieces. In theory, when the seam goes in here, and when the bias tape goes on here, the cardboard gets sandwiched within the fabric and is so perfectly placed that it won't need any adhesive to stay in the hat and work as structure. But then that the seams around the cardboard allow it to fold into a hat that you can store. The issue with this in practice is that when I went to sew together all of my leather pieces, the other idea I had with this is that if I make it to where you have to cut each section of it, then you can use less fabric. It's supposed to be the kind of thing you could do really cheaply, or like even with like thrifted materials, or you could do like patchwork and just get 7 of these pieces and use very little fabric because you don't actually have to cut the full circle. You just have to fit 7 pieces that you could get them all sewn together and then stick your rectangles in there. I was just sticking them in there with basting spray, but this was actually really hard to do because the hat is a cone. Once they're all sewn together, as you can see, it all starts kind of standing up, and it was really hard to fit the cardboard in there and like keep the fabric flat, especially when this pleather is like a little bit stretchy. And I kept having to cut the cardboard because if I sewed it even a little bit wrong, like not exactly 1/2 inch, then it would be off and I would have to cut the cardboard. And I went around and I did this, and I think I proved that this could work. It would just be really tilting, and you might have to do some of it by hand. This is me putting the other, like, so there's the lining one and the top one. This is me putting them together, and it kind of seemed like this might work. But then I started to realize, like, if you're gonna do this, you've got your 7 seams on the top and your 7 seams on the bottom. And the idea was that you would sew both layers together in the gaps between the cardboard. But that sounds really precisely annoying, especially when you consider that if you don't have them lined up correctly, you're gonna end up with an extra top stitch in there that just looks really weird and bad. I would like to back up a second and talk about how witch hats work. Not even witch hats, wide-brimmed hats. There's 2 problems with wide-brim hats, and they're both gravity. So the first problem is, how do you keep all of this from flopping? You need structure. But then the other problem is, how, if you put the structure in there, how do you keep this bottom layer from just drooping? The 2 ways to prevent the drooping are adhesive. You can use an adhesive interfacing as your structure. You can use a double-sided adhesive interfacing as your structure. If you want to put mulling in there, which is an extra layer that separates like the visible layer from the actual structure with some kind of soft padding, which makes the hat look softer and hides the structure. This has no mulling. But the other thing you can do is just sew them together. And these are top-stitched together, but not with cardboard. Here is what it would look like if you did use cardboard. Somebody take this and run with it. Somebody do this. Somebody make this work. I, at this point, was not feeling super good. Like, I think there's just like a record number of pollen in Georgia. And so I've had a couple days weeks when I was just like, and this was one of those days. So I was like, this is stupid. I literally have Pellon 71F in my garage, and I went out and got my Pellon 71F, which is an upholstery interfacing, and I copied the pattern onto it, put all the 7 pieces together of the pattern that would have been the cardboard, abutment stitched them down the side, put it with the bottom layer, and top stitched the bottom layer at all of the seams where the pieces come together. And then the top layer is not actually top stitched down. Now you'll never have droopy lining because it's top stitched to the structure. And then you just put the top layer on there, match it up at the seams, sew everything around the edge, and then I added some bias tape. I didn't bother making like leather bias tape. I just got some black bias tape, sewed the bias tape around the edge, and you flip and fold it over. And I actually folded it all the way to the other side, like all the way flipped under. It's only on this side, it's not on this side. And the reason I did that is because I cut the structure to the cardboard shape, which meant that the leather overhung the actual fabric by 1/2 inch. I will put this pattern up for free, but I'd like everyone to know that the shape of the cone is bigger than the shape that you get when you sew the brim together, which is why I'm like cutting it down here. I will try to alter the pattern to actually be the correct shape. I had to cut mine down. The stuff I did next is kind of goofy and weird. I put bias tape. I put the bias tape in here, like from the underside, and left it open. And then I also put bias tape around the bottom of the cone. And then I was going to sew them together, but then I realized to do that, I had to use like pliers to pull everything through because it's faux leather and there's upholstery interfacing in there. And I was being affected by allergies and I did not feel good. And so I gave up on doing that and I hot glued them together. Very carefully though. You cannot see the hot glue in there. Essentially what I did was I really carefully pinned them together and then like lifted up the edge of the inside of the brim and did a little bit of hot glue around the edge, did a little more hot glue. I actually put EVA foam in there because the hat also ended up a little too big for my head. And then I took that bias tape that I installed and I was too lazy to sew it in. And so I tacky glued it to the EVA foam that I hot glued over where the seam meets. But you know what? They're together pretty well. It worked out okay. You can't even tell. You don't see the hot glue's okay if you can't see it. That's my leather witch hat. I have prepared a speech for this, but it is so stupid. I wrote this like 20 minutes ago, so don't expect any great things. I may not have made you a cardboard reliant structured hat that you were maybe looking for, but I have at least provided a roadmap for something that might work. Inexpensive or free materials are not inherently lesser than buckram or interfacing. They just create challenges that those solved long ago. Or rather, they create challenges that those never had to deal with. Miss Kitty's so interested in that. Miss Kitty's gonna do it. So, do not be afraid to face those challenges. Take them on better than I did, Miss Kitty. Because when you figure out how to do something yourself, you will probably remember how to do it better than if I just showed you how to do it. And don't you want to retain your ability to make a really cute hat like this one? Miss Kitty will figure it out for us. Tune in next week for Miss Kitty's cardboard witch hat.